A vice chairman of Taiwan's KMT, is currently visiting China's mainland in what he describes as an apolitical visit, focusing on agricultural and fishery products, the livelihoods of Taiwanese living on China's mainland, and other economic issues. But the visit comes hot off the heels of a new survey by Taiwan's Democracy Foundation that shows a majority of Taiwanese do not trust the US and are fearful they'll be pulled into a conflict between Washington and Beijing. I'll put that link under the video, but it is in Chinese. The survey consisted of 1,073 participants aged over 20. When asked whether or not they agree that Taiwan cannot fully trust the United States and must keep a distance in order to avoid being involved in a conflict between China and the US, more than half, or 53%, agreed. Let me just say that again. More than half of Taiwanese locals agree that the US cannot be trusted and that Taiwan must distance itself from Washington. The survey, which was released just last month, offers detailed breakdowns of participants' responses for each question. Now, you might think that older people would be more distrusting of the US and younger people might be more keen to cozy up, but that's actually not true. Those aged 70 and over were least likely to distrust the US at just 37.1%. Females were slightly more likely to distrust Washington at 53.4% versus 52.6% for males. And generally, the more educated a participant was, the more wary they were of the US. Those who had only completed primary school education were more trusting of Uncle Sam, while 57.1% of graduate students want to distance themselves from the superpower. As expected, the results varied depending on political affiliations. 71.8% of KMT participants agreed with the statement, and only 30.1% of DPP participants. An even higher number of participants agree that the US claims to advocate for the One China policy and not support Taiwan independence, but that in actuality it uses Taiwan as leverage against China's mainland. 62.8% of those aged between 20 and 29 agree, and that climbs to 68.5% for 40 to 49-year-olds. Again, the higher educated a participant is, the more likely they are to agree that the US is using Taiwan against Beijing. Only 20.5% of those who only completed primary school education agree, but that skyrockets to 85.4% of graduate students. Interestingly, a majority of respondents from both major parties agreed, with KMT respondents at 66% and DPP respondents at 55.4%. Now that's quite fascinating because it means that a majority of Tsai Ing-wen's DPP members know full well the games the US is playing, but they're still more than willing to trust Uncle Sam. During KMT Vice Chairman Andrew Tsai's ongoing visit to the mainland, the delegation met with the head of Beijing's Taiwan Affairs Office and visited Nanjing and Shanghai, among other places. Now, Beijing will be hoping to strengthen ties between Taiwan through this visit, and maybe even get official communications back on track across the straits. Global Times reported that Zhu Fenglian, spokesperson for the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council, said that joint efforts should be made to advance relations between the Communist Party of China and the KMT, and relations across the Taiwan Straits, safeguard peace and stability across the straits, and improve the interests and well-being of compatriots on both sides of the straits. Currently, official communication lines between Beijing and Taiwan have been cut since Tsai Ing-wen's DPP does not honor the 1992 consensus, which saw both sides agree that there is only one China. But her attitudes towards China's mainland don't appear to be supported by many Taiwanese. Last November, she was forced to step down from her role as party chair following an embarrassing local election defeat. Now, local elections in Taiwan aren't usually about major, wider issues, but this time Tsai Ing-wen and the DPP urged voters to use the elections as a show of support for her increasingly hostile attitudes towards Beijing. That backfired majorly. As shown by Taiwan's Democracy Foundation survey, Taiwanese citizens are growing tired of the DPP's neglect of the 1992 consensus